Hi, my name is Oleg, my nickname is Fukuruku, and I'm going to record a small overview of the HUD that was created for me and aJarov by the service Poker Pop-Up Statistics Workshop. We have developed this HUD based on the one we have been using for several years already. All the stats that would be necessary for us were well thought out, and now I'm going to tell you what we ended up with. Alright, let's have a look. The first line is stack size in big blinds, then comes the number of hands. Next we have a positional stat, raise first in. It's displayed for every player at the table. The bluish one is fold SB to steal. We can only see it for the person on the small blind. Next comes cold call. It's also positional, but we can see it for every player on every position. We needed to see how wide this person calls open raises, even when we sit behind him. The next stat is one when saw flop. Next line, VPIP PFR, 3-bet, which is also positional. 3-bet in position and out of position. By the way, it's non-all-in, just a regular 3-bet, not a re-steal. The next stat is fold to 3-bet, which is also positional, depending on whether a person is in position to us, to the hero, or out of position. Fold to 3-bet, in position and out of position. Next we can see the 4-bet range, the total range. We need it in our HUD to see how aggressive a person is and how aggressively he reacts to our 3-bets. The last one in the second row is fold to 4-bet, which is also useful. And the third line is cbet, also positional, in position, out of position. However, to be able to correctly assess this stat in a multi-way pot, I recommend to open up the pop-up and have a look at how the person plays in position and out of position. Fold to cbet, also in position and out of position, as related to hero. Raise or check raise versus cbet. Next comes bet versus missed cbet, which means it's either in position, or if a villain is out of position, this means bet turn after missed cbet. We can see that in these stack sizes, this guy has 0 raise from cutoff, and we still defend 8-6 offsuit. This small block of 2 stats is only displayed if a person acts before hero. The first one is delayed cbet. It's also positional, and it's applicable in position and out of position. And the second one is fold to float, how often he folds when someone bets against his missed cbet. If we're in the small blind or the big blind, we can see this block of stats for the other opponent on the blinds. These are 3 numbers. The first one is open limp from the small blind. The second one is isolating small blind limps from the big blind, and the third one is limp fold on the small blind. Now we see a lot of limped pots in blind versus blind situations in MTTs. That's why I think these stats should be directly available in the HUD. Well, I guess that should be it with the main HUD. Right, we also have this small stat here, which is only displayed for the big blind. That's fold big blind to steal, meaning steal from the button or the cutoff. Now that's the main HUD, but I'm not finished yet. Most of the stats have very detailed pop-ups associated with them. Again, created by me and aJarov. Alright, let's have a look at them. This pop-up is experimental, and I'd be happy to have a look if it works good enough, but the sample size is unfortunately very small. This pop-up shows us the aggression of a player in the tournament as the blinds increase, which means his raise first in, his VPIP, his 3-bet push, and 3-bet non-all-in. Maybe if we gather a lot of hands on someone, this stat turns out to be useful. If we click the number of hands, we'll see the pop-up of total limping. That's useful to identify the fish, to see how often they limp, and it's a useful thing in general. If we click this fold big blind to steal, for the person on the big blind, we'll see a comprehensive pop-up of playing on the big blind against the button. How the person plays in the big blind, what does he push, what does he 3-bet, how does he play the post flop. The call open stat is basically displayed for every position, but sometimes it's also nice to see the general call open statistics. Because the HUD stats only display statistics for specific stack size, or rather for a range of stack sizes. Let me tell you about these categories of stack sizes. The first category is the level of 0 to 16 big blinds, to see basically the push-fold stats. The next one is 16 to 28 BB, when a player can open raise and give up to an all-in. 28 to 45 big blinds, a typical MSS player, and 45 big blinds and more, which represents the deep stacks. Now sometimes there are not enough hands for a specific stack size, and that's where it comes handy to open up the general statistics. Alright, we've been moved to another table, but yeah, we'll see the stats now. By clicking on Raise First, we open up the Steal pop-up. Here I guess we lack the sample size, but we'll still push. One win soft flop also opens up a very useful one. We can see how often a person wins showdowns after raising and check raising, and we can also see how often the player wins the showdown after betting a specific amount. By clicking on VPIP, we also open up the total limping, just like with the number of hands. The PFR opens up the raise first in for every stack size. I mean the general raise first without splitting according to stack sizes. The comprehensive 3-bet pop-up, all the statistics related to 3-bets. In the HUD we can also see the positional IP or OOP, and it's also non-all-in. And sometimes we need to see how often the person 3-bet pushes, how often they squeeze push, how often they fold to 4 bets after squeezes, and how he 3-bets against specific positions. Fold to 3-bet is also a positional stat and a positional pop-up. We have one OOP pop-up against 3-bet, and we also have this pop-up for the situation when a player is in position against the 3-bet. Unfortunately, we'll only be able to see it when we are on the big blind. The 4-bet range stat opens up this pop-up called 4-bet. It's a very small one. It's about cold 4-betting, by pushing and non-all-in. Here we also have the nodes container, because there is no room in other pop-ups. Let's make a note on this guy that he's probably a fish, and you can see this note here. Fold to 4-bet also has a detailed pop-up, how a player reacts to 4-bets and 4-bet pushes in various stacks. Unfortunately, we need a lot of samples for this, but sometimes it might also come in useful. Now let's turn to cbets. Cbets out of position as preflop raiser, in position. By default, the pop-up opens up the necessary position, the one for our situation. If a player is out of position to us, we can see OOP first, and if he is in position, we will see the in position first. We have all the necessary info here in this pop-up. We have single raised pots, we have multi-way pots, we have 3-bet pots, and we also have some info on how he plays after missing cbets. Let's see where we have the maximum number of hands, probably here. We can see he makes a delayed cbet in 43% of cases, and of course we have the default hand-to-note pop-ups for those stats. Alright, we've seen the 3-bets, the cbets. We don't have any default pop-ups for check raises, but now we're gonna be on the big blind, and we'll have a pop-up about limped pots. There you go. This person limps 43% from the small blind, and that's how he plays on the small blind in a limped pot. Of course, we don't have enough samples now, but doesn't matter. This is the pop-up about how he plays on the big blind in a limped pot. And a pop-up about his reactions to limping in various stack sizes. How often he limps, how often he isolates, how he pushes, all the necessary info. Well, I guess that's about it. I think we've ended up with a very high quality, useful HUD, which can make your game significantly easier, especially when multi-tabling heavily, just like me and aJarov. Let's push here. And finally, let's have a look at these stats for Hero. BPI PPFR, folds to 3-bets, overall 3-bet, second line cbet fold to cbet, stack size in big blind, and the number of hands in this tournament. Unfortunately, this is the limitation of hand-to-note. It can only display the number of hands in this tournament, not the overall number of hands for the session. I guess that's it. If you purchase our HUDs, your 10s will always hold against 8s. Thank you, bye bye.